Hey everybody, Grommel's here with some more footage from the Ground Forces closed beta. Though I have to say it is not that closed anymore. With large amount of invites going out lately, I think you can almost call it an open beta by now. But in case you somehow missed it, the closed beta test moved to the live server. If you are a closed beta tester, you can take part in tank events to play Ground Forces. And rank 4 and rank 5 tanks have been added, so the entire tech tree seems to be available. So, with the exception of the premium tanks, we can test all of them now, and I would like to talk about some of the new tanks that are available now. But before we start with that, a few other things I would like to address. First of all, my new setup. Since my computer wasn't the newest anymore, I decided to get a new one for two reasons. First, because of Star Citizen is on the horizon and I want a new one for that, and secondly, my old one could only record in 720p, and the visual quality of my videos was not that great because of that. So now that I have a new PC, I can record in 1080p, and I hope this will lead to an increase in visual quality. I am still playing with the setup here, so I don't know if this video is optimal or not. It is the first I make with the new settings. So I have to see how it looks after YouTube is done messing with it, and then I can check if I can improve it some more. Also, it took a bit of work to fix a few problems with the new setup, so I did not have a new video out lately, but now everything works, I hope. Now, with the new PC, I bought the TrackIR as well, which I want for simulator battles, and I just used it the first time an hour or so before I started making this video, and I have to say I am very impressed with it. Now, I did have high expectations from the start, as you could probably tell from my previous videos. However, what I did not expect is how easy it is to get used to a head tracking device like this. I assumed you would need some time to train before you could properly control the camera with your head movements, but as it turns out, you really don't. It feels pretty natural. I know I sometimes kind of sound like a TrackIR commercial, but I really am impressed with this little thing. And I decided to include my first sortie or my first two sorties in simulator battle mode with a plane in this video. It's nothing special, no fancy flying or anything, but I thought it would still be nice to include it, because it is my first shot at flying in simulator battle mode, and I think there is not that much footage out there of flying in simulator battle mode in the closed beta test. So I hope it is interesting, even though it is not particularly good flying. I thought the tank events would be a great place to start and get used to flying from the cockpit and with TrackIR without much real aerial opposition and quick action, and I would say I was half right about that. You do get quick action for simulator battle standards, however there is one problem with flying in simulator battle mode in the closed beta at the moment. The AI-controlled anti-aircraft guns are clearly too powerful for simulator battle mode at the moment on most maps. Now, I expect the powerful anti-aircraft guns are needed in arcade and realistic battle mode, where it is much easier to find targets and attack them from the air, but in simulator battle mode they are too strong and pretty much every match will end up with you being shot down by the AA pretty fast. But I do expect this will be adjusted for simulator battles soon. I already brought it up on the forums, and it was confirmed that it is planned to adjust the AI AA in simulator battle mode. Despite that though, I think I will look into ground attack planes more in the future. I have pretty much ignored ground attack in the game so far, because I never thought it was very interesting. I don't think killing AI targets is that fun, and honestly, I felt that in realistic and arcade mode, hitting ground targets is not that much of a challenge, so I never did pay much attention to that part of the game. But now in simulator battle mode with tanks being real players, I could very much imagine flying an IL-2 or a Ju-87G for example more often in the ground attack role. Fighting real players is more fun, and I think flying in simulator battle mode adds the necessary challenge to the ground attack missions to make it really interesting. I still think that ground forces potentially have a positive effect on simulator battle mode, as it focuses the action more, so you are much more likely to run into a player even if there is only a small amount of planes in the air. Just the AI and the aircraft guns need to be reduced. Another thing, a friend of mine just started playing War Thunder 2, and in some of the footage we are squadded up, so some of the footage might have voice comms in the background. Now, I personally think that it is not a big deal hearing some battle comms in the background, and not worth the effort to set the recording up in such a way that you can delete the audio tracks afterwards. But let me know what you think. So, that is what I wanted to mention. Let's take a look at what is new in the tank tech tree and discuss a few of the new tanks we get to test in this stage of the closed beta test. This is just a basic overview though. I plan to do more in-depth videos about the new tanks once I have unlocked them, which may take a little while for all the rank 5 ones. Now let's start with the Russian tree in this video. The German rank 5s got of course a lot of prototype vehicles, and because there's not that much information available, I want to really drive and fight them first before I say much about them. Also, there are a few problems with some of the higher tier German tanks. I think especially about the Jagdpanther here, which has a completely broken damage model. And I usually don't drive those kind of tanks till they are fixed. I don't want an artificial advantage that makes me feel like a cheater, so I did not drive the T50 when it was broken or the L11, and I won't start with the Jagdpanther. So I want to wait till the tanks get a proper damage model for an opinion on it. Now, we already had the rank 4 in the past, so we will go over those really quick. At the medium line, at rank 4, we have at first a second T-34-85. Now, this rank 4 T-34 has a slightly different gun than the rank 3 version of the T-34-85, but the difference is basically just the name. Both guns are modifications of the same 85mm anti-aircraft gun, and in-game they are pretty much the same. However, unlike the rank 3 version, the one on rank 4 gets a APCR round to unlock, so you can use that to get some more penetration at the expense of damage. But other than that, the rank 3 and rank 4 T-34-85 are basically the same. Now, the next tank in line however provides a little bit of a bigger jump in performance, the T-44. Now, the T-44 retains the same mobility and firepower than the T-34-85. It has the same gun and the same engine power at roughly the same weight. However, the T-44 has a better armor protection. The frontal hull armor is doubled, 90mm instead of 45mm, retaining the same slope, and 75mm at the sides. The turret has 120mm at the front and 90 at the sides, so the tank is much better protected than its predecessor. However, it also has a much higher battle rating, and it will meet a lot of opponents that will not be impressed at all by that armor. So, like the T-34, the T-44 is a tank that needs to use its mobility to flank and avoid head-on fights with a lot of the opponents it will meet at this rank. Especially since it has the same gun than the T-34-85 at a much higher battle rating, meeting better armored opposition. Well, that's it for the mediums at rank 4. Now let's take a look at the heavies at rank 4. Here we have two IS-2 versions. The IS-2 has of course a long 122mm cannon, quite a dangerous gun, however also with a very long reload. The first version has the same armor layout than the IS-1 at the front. The later Mod 1944 version has a better armor layout, with the entire frontal glacis plate 60 degrees sloped back. So the Mod 1944 version has a somewhat better armor protection at the front than the IS-1 and the earlier IS-2. But again, at the battle rating it sits, it will meet guns that will make more than up for it. The 122mm has a good penetration, but to penetrate the turret of a Tiger B with a Henschel turret, you have to most likely be within 150 meters or closer. So the IS-2 can deal with mediums and tank destroyers in a head-to-head fight, but against heavies with the same battle rating it will most likely have to flank most of the time, because on the real realistic and simulator battle maps 150 meters is not a range we will fight at very often. So that was the heavies at rank 4. Let's take a look at the rank 4 tank destroyers. Now here we start with the very interesting one, the Su-100. That was one of my favorite vehicles when we got to test rank 4 last time. The Su-100 is one of the two vehicles in the Russian tree that get the D10 cannon. The chassis of the Su-100 is the same than on the Su-85M, so it has 75mm frontal armor 50 degrees sloped back, which at this battle rating won't stop much. But the 100mm T10 cannon is in my opinion the best gun in the Russian tree, and once you unlocked the unlock round, it will beat the 122mm T25 cannon in penetration. Certainly a good tank killer, but it also needs to be played carefully due to its lack of armor. Still, a vehicle I really look forward to driving again. Now, the next rank 4 tank destroyers in line are two ISU 122s, assault guns based on the IS chassis, which have the same long 122mm cannons than the IS-2. The ISU 122 has the A19 cannon and the ISU 122S has the D25. But as with the T-34-85s, the difference is so far in name only. And when it comes to those ISU 122 assault guns, I honestly have to say I'm not impressed. Now, my opinion may change when I get to play them again, but for now I don't see those to be all that great. The SU-100 that comes before it gets a higher penetration gun with a higher fire rate, and I don't think the extra damage you do if you penetrate is enough to make up for the decrease in penetration and rate of fire. And as far as armor goes, the ISU has 90mm at the front, but only with 30 degrees slope back and 75mm at the side. Again, at this battle rating, this is simply not going to stop anything, and to round things off, the vehicle is not even more mobile or smaller and easier to conceal than an IS-2 and lacks a turret. It does not seem to have much of an upside over the IS-2 at the same battle rating. Well, those are the rank 4 vehicles. Let's talk a bit about the rank 5 tanks. Those I have not driven yet. I am working on unlocking them though, and I hope I can bring you footage and more in-depth analysis of them soon. For now, I tell you what I expect from the information I have. So let's start with the two heavies on rank 5. First, we got the IS-3. This tank is well known for its menacing looking front, which is angled both in the vertical and horizontal, creating the typical bike nose. However, I think that hull armor is not as strong as it may look at first. It has 110mm and is sloped 55 degrees back in the vertical and on top of that roughly 30 degrees back in the horizontal plane. The IS-2 Mod 1944 in comparison has 120mm of armor, 60 degrees slope back and no slope in the horizontal, unless you angle the tank of course. Now, the thing about armor angles is that the effect increases exponentially. That means the higher the slope already is, the more you gain from making it even bigger, and the more you lose from making it smaller again. To give you a quick example, for simplicity reason just using a 100mm armor plate and line of sight thickness. Let's compare a 90 degree vertical plate with one sloped back 30 degrees. Sloping it back 30 degrees gets you a line of sight thickness of about 115mm, so you gain 15mm of armor for those 30 degrees. Now let's start with the 100mm plate that is sloped back 55 degrees already. That's a line of sight thickness of 174mm. Let's add 5 degrees extra to that slope to get it to 60 degrees. That gets you 200mm of line of sight thickness. The extra 5 degrees here get you an increase of roughly 25mm of line of sight thickness. That's something important to keep in mind whenever driving or fighting against a tank with sloped armor. Every bump in the terrain might have a very big effect on your protection. Having your nose pointing up might increase it quite a bit, something you can use in tanks with sloped armor and good gun depression, like the M4 Sherman, to get into a position where your nose is pointing slightly up, increasing your armor protection, while for example coming down a hill might reduce the angle of an incoming shot and your protection substantially. What this means for the IS-3 is, despite its menacing looks, the IS-3's front hull armor should not be more effective than that of the IS-2 1944. The extra slope in the horizontal plane is not enough to make up for the slight decrease in armor thickness and slope in the vertical. And that is if both tanks point straight at you. If the IS-3 is angled a bit, it actually decreases the effectiveness of its armor because you can shoot the side of the bike with the slope negated. The reason for the IS-3's hull shape is by the way not because the slope in two planes makes it harder to penetrate than just the slope in the vertical like on the IS-2, but to keep shots that bounce off the hull from bouncing up and hitting the cannon or the turret. With this shape they bounce off to the side if they bounce. Where the IS-3's armor does shine is when it comes to the turret. Here you have quite a big increase in armor strength compared to the IS-2 and a very good shape. So an IS-3 in a hull down position is most likely very hard to take out. However, the relatively bad gun depression reduces the amount of hull down positions you can effectively use. The gun is the same than the one on the IS-2, so again you will need to be within about 150 meters to penetrate the turret of a Henschel Tiger II. So that's it for the IS-3. Let's take a look at the next heavy tank in the line, which is of course the IS-4M, the top tier of the three. The IS-4M has impressive armor, 160mm at the front and the sides, with 60 degrees sloped back at the front and 30 degrees at the upper part of the sides. The turret has 250mm at the front and 200 at the sides. The tank is a tough nut to crack from the front and for lower tier vehicles from the sides and rear too. A Panther II as well as all the vehicles with 88mm L70 can get through the side of the hull at about 750 meters with Panzergranate 39 though, and about 1200 meters with the Panzergranate 40. The Tiger II with the 105mm should get through the sides at 1000 meters with the Panzergranate 39 and at 2000 meters with the Panzergranate 40. At the front, I want to test the actual tank a bit more to see what the best option is. There is a bulge in the front of the driver, for example. Now that's not a hatch or a vision slit, but I think it is not thicker than the rest of the hull armor and the lower part of it is not as sloped. If this part of the tank in the front of the driver is indeed not thicker than the rest of the armor, it might be a weak spot. And as I have said earlier, a lot of the tank's armor protection comes from good slope. So be careful if a tank engages you from higher ground. That would reduce some of the sloping, and it will not need much of a height difference to make the front hull no more effective than the side. Now, the big downside of the IS-4 is again its gun. It still has the same 122mm cannon than on the IS-2, so high rank fights with heavy tanks might require a lot of flanking, as they in general will have trouble penetrating each other from the front. So, let's move on to the ISU-152. The rank 5 assault gun. Now here I have a similar issue than with the ISU-122. The 90mm of armor is just useless at this rank, and the cannon is of course the same ML20 than on the rank 3 SU-152. On the plus side, the muzzle velocity of the ML20 is a lot better than that of the KV-2's ML10 cannon, so long-range shots are not as completely hopeless. Still, I think the ISU-152 needs to be played very careful to be effective and needs a gunner that knows his business. Still, I'm looking forward to trying it to see how it will do at this high rank. Now, last but not least, the D-54. Now, that is a tank I really look forward to playing. I always liked tanks that combine mobility and firepower, and the D-54 adds a decent armor to the mix. The D-54 is the other vehicle that gets the 100mm D-10 cannon, so in my opinion it is better armed than the IS-2 to IS-4 tanks, at least with the unlock ammo, and the tank should be very mobile. Which is of course very important, because even with the D-10 cannon you will, as always, most likely have to flank to successfully fight heavy tanks. Now, as far as armor protection goes, the D-54 got 100mm front hull armor, which is 60 degrees sloped back, and the turret has 200mm at the front. At the sides, the hull has 80mm and the turret has 160mm, so you got some armor protection, but keep in mind though that this is a top battle rating tank, so don't expect this armor to save you from everything. There is more than enough at this battle rank that can penetrate your front at close to a kilometer or even above. Still, that is the tank that I am working towards at the moment, and I hope I can bring you some footage of it soon, and more in-depth description of it too. Well, that was a preliminary overview of the Russian rank 5 tanks. Since the tanks were just released, all that, including my opinion, might be subject to change. As I unlock the rank 5 tanks, I will go into more detail about them. Also, the Germans will get their own videos once I've driven or fought them more often and some of the problems with, for example, the Jagdpanther has been fixed. And I am of course planning on doing more simulator battle plane videos as soon as possible too, either in a ground attack role in the closed beta test or on the live server. Well, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.